The spotlight hit him like a halo. The crowd roared, and Elvis Presley stood center stage, confident, magnetic, untouchable. But then everything shifted. In a moment no one, not even Priscilla, saw coming, he stopped the music, leaned into the mic, and began sharing raw, emotional details about their past. The audience fell silent. But as his words echoed through the room, one thing became clear. Something wasn't right. What he said felt off, and the truth. It was far messier, more painful, and shockingly different from the version he gave that night. Even after walking away from their marriage, Elvis and Priscilla Presley remained bound in ways deeper than any legal contract. Theirs wasn't a clean break, but a complicated dance between affection, responsibility, and lingering emotions. Though their union as husband and wife had ended, they never truly let go of the connection they once shared. Their lives continued to intertwine, on the phone, behind closed doors, and most notably in the presence of their daughter, Lisa Marie. There was a tenderness in the way they tried to preserve what remained of their bond, even if it meant quietly tucking away their pain. For the sake of their little girl, they made an unspoken promise, not to each other, but to her. Elvis, often on the road and wrapped in the demands of fame, still tried to maintain a sense of normalcy. Priscilla, too, chose to show up, to stay cordial, and to shield Lisa Marie from the fractures between them. They smiled in photos, shared moments backstage, and kept up appearances, even when the wounds of the past hadn't quite healed. It wasn't easy, but they both knew that raising a child in the spotlight demanded more grace than bitterness. And so the stage became more than just a place for Elvis to perform. It became a place where their unusual closeness played out under watchful eyes. Priscilla would sometimes sit in the audience, watching the man she once loved sing songs that had once been theirs. Even as other women came and went, she remained a quiet, steady presence, clapping along, smiling when the spotlight passed over her. But on one particular night, as she sat in the crowd once again, something unfolded that would take her, and everyone else, by complete surprise. The stage was lit in gold, the crowd pulsing with anticipation, when Elvis did something that caught everyone off guard. Midway through his set, just as the music began to swell into another familiar melody, he paused. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was electric. He glanced out into the audience, eyes searching until they locked onto someone in the crowd. With a smirk and a twinkle that fans had adored for years, he gestured toward her. "She's right here. Honey, stand up," he said warmly, inviting Priscilla into the spotlight. Not just figuratively, but literally. The audience, unsure whether to cheer or gasp, responded with scattered applause. In that moment, a deeply private connection was put on full display. What came next stunned nearly everyone in the room. With casual ease, Elvis began to speak, not just about his next song, but about his past, about their past. He spoke of the heartbreak, the separation, and the reasons things hadn't worked out. "Our divorce wasn't about another man or woman," he said, voice steady, almost rehearsed. "It was the circumstances involving my career. I was gone too much." It was personal, poignant, and strangely public. A confession wrapped in charm, but delivered to thousands. And Priscilla, seated among the crowd, was suddenly no longer just another guest. She had become part of the act. The audience hung on his every word, soaking in what felt like vulnerability from a man rarely known for it. He painted a picture of self-sacrifice, implying that it was his decision, motivated by fairness, by decency, by love. He talked about remaining friends, about raising their daughter with care, and about offering her anything she wanted in the settlement. To those listening, it sounded noble, admirable even. But beneath the glimmer of the stage lights and the smooth delivery, not everything lined up. Something in his tone, or maybe in the way Priscilla didn't speak at all, suggested there was more to the story than what Elvis chose to share that night. In the quiet pages of her memoir, Elvis and Me, Priscilla Presley peeled back the velvet curtain to reveal a life far more complex than the public ever saw. Beneath the glamour, she confessed to feeling like a shadow in her own marriage, present yet unheard. As she matured and began exploring life outside the walls of Graceland, she slowly recognized a truth she could no longer ignore. She was growing, evolving, and craving independence. Meanwhile, her role in Elvis's world remained painfully fixed. Decisions were often made without her voice, and her needs were quietly eclipsed by the gravitational pull of his fame. She spoke of observing other relationships, ones where women had equal say, shared purpose, and mutual respect. It was a stark contrast to her own situation, where she often felt more like a delicate accessory than a partner. The emotional imbalance only deepened as Elvis's pattern of infidelity continued. He was frequently unfaithful, and though Priscilla eventually formed a connection of her own with her karate instructor, Mike Stone, it was Elvis's repeated betrayals that left the deepest cracks in their foundation. What began as youthful romance had grown into something hollow, marked by distance and unspoken disappointment. The breaking point came in a moment both intimate and unsettling. After a Las Vegas show, Elvis summoned her to his suite. What unfolded was less about love and more about power, a final physical attempt to reclaim control over something already slipping away. And it was in the painful stillness that followed that Priscilla found her clarity. Her voice quivered, but she knew what she had to say. "I'm leaving," she told him, breaking not only his expectations, but the illusion they'd both held on to for too long. He was stunned, disbelieving, unable to comprehend why she'd walk away from what he believed was everything a woman could want. But this wasn't about luxury, it was about freedom, and she had finally chosen hers. As the audience clung to every word Elvis spoke that night, there was one person in the room who couldn't believe what she was hearing: Priscilla. She sat frozen, her heart pounding, unsure whether to stand, smile, or disappear. For years, she had known Elvis as someone fiercely private, someone who kept his emotions tucked away behind lyrics and smirks. And now here he was, bearing pieces of their story to thousands of strangers. Later, she would describe the moment with just 5 words: "I was in shock." And then she added something that cut even deeper. "It was like watching a different person." To anyone who had truly known Elvis, this moment was jarring. He wasn't the type to explain himself publicly, especially when it came to matters of the heart. His fans had seen him cry through a melody or break down behind the curtain, but to spell out personal emotions with such clarity, that was a different kind of exposure. It wasn't just unusual, it was unsettling. For someone who had always maintained a certain mystique, this speech felt like peeling back the last layer of armor. For Elvis, music had always been his confessional. He would pour heartbreak, longing, and regret into every verse, letting the song speak where he would not. The stage was his sanctuary, but not for explanations. That night marked a rare and unexpected departure from everything he had been. Instead of letting his voice tremble through a ballad, he used words, raw, unscripted, and startling. For Priscilla, it wasn't just the content that stunned her, but the fact that he had shared it at all. Something had shifted. But whether it was vulnerability or performance, the lines had suddenly blurred. On the surface, Elvis's words seemed heartfelt, gracious even. He spoke of friendship, of mutual respect, and of a breakup unmarred by betrayal. To many in the audience, it sounded like the perfect post-love story. 2 people mature enough to part ways without bitterness. But for those who knew the truth, the messy, painful, complicated truth, his version left out far too much. It was a carefully polished narrative, one that traded raw emotion for public comfort. And in doing so, it quietly rewrote history. There's something powerful about the microphone, about standing under lights, knowing all eyes and ears are fixed on you. Maybe that night, Elvis wasn't just sharing. Maybe he was performing once again, but this time not in song, but in story. His story. By framing the end of his marriage as a casualty of circumstance rather than consequence, he retained control. No scandals, no missteps, just a tragic love story undone by distance. It was safer that way, more palatable, and perhaps more in line with the image he wanted the world to remember. But underneath the charm, the smile, and the applause, one question lingers like a note left unresolved. Was Elvis simply blinded by denial, unwilling to confront the pain he'd caused? Or was he deliberately shaping the memory, preserving a version of himself that fans would continue to adore? Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't about the truth at all. Maybe it was about protecting the myth, the legend, the man the world wanted him to be. If you found this story as fascinating and layered as we did, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you have thoughts about what really happened between Elvis and Priscilla, or your own take on why he chose to speak out that night, drop a comment below. We'd love to hear your perspective. And of course, make sure to subscribe so you never miss more deep dives into the hidden moments behind the legends. There's always more beneath the surface.